Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. My name is Caitlin Ann Randall, and I am a psychology major here at Bellevue College. I chose to do my article review on a topic that is near and dear to my heart, sports psychology. This article is from the Counseling Psychology Journal in June 2019, volume 71. It's called Coaching Olympic Athletes with Sports Psychology by Karen Kogan. Before I dive into who Karen Kogan is, I'm going to give you all a brief background on myself since we cannot physically be in class and get to know one another. I am 27 years old and I have been playing fast pitch softball for 21 years and I continue to play. I played at the collegiate level in 2011 and 2013. I've also been coaching fast pitch for 11 years, both on the individual level and the team level. My goal is to become a sports psychologist after I finish my BA in psychology. As much as I love to talk about myself, I'm going to dive straight into this article. Karen Kogan was a collegiate gymnast at UCLA. She wanted to go to the Olympics, but she had 2 knee injuries that retired her from the sport. Instead, she studied to be a sports psychologist. She has attended 4 Olympic Games for acrobatic and combat sports. She is a member of the United States Olympic Committee, a member of the American Psychological Association in the Sports Psychology Division, and a member of the Association of Applied Sports Psychology and serves on the executive board. So Kogan highlights a lot of good points in her article. For the sake of time, I'm going to briefly touch on the topics that stuck out to me as the main points, and they are the experience at the Olympic Games, a whole person context, mindfulness, energy management, and performance as a sports psychologist. From her experiences at the Olympic Games, she highlights the differences between normal competition and normal competition settings. These differences are, it happens once every 4 years. There's more media coverage for even the smaller sports that normally do not get coverage. There's greater security. There are more spectators. Each sport is the focus and has the feeling of all eyes are on me moments. There is more intensity and pressure felt, and most athletes' future are on the line, and we call these the make it or break it moments. With the intensity of the Olympics, Kogan outlines something called games mode. She describes this as being on top of competition 100% of the time, and being 1 to 2 steps ahead of knowing what each of their athlete needs. She describes that the athletes have their own kind of games mode, but this is just a way to keep perspective on how they gear up as sports psychologists at the Olympics. This is just a list of the responsibilities as a sports psychologist are expected to do and be in games mode, and I will touch on this in just a couple minutes. She touches on her experiences at the Winter Olympics in 2002, which helped shape what she practices today. This was her first attendance as a sports psychologist to the Olympic Games. She noted 2 experiences that she had there. First, she had an athlete whom got asked by news reporters to follow them around for a day to observe what it was like to be an Olympic athlete. The athlete said yes and then later realized that it was a distraction. Kogan used this to shape the role of creating a media plan for each athlete to help them focus throughout the competition and stopping any trouble in its tracks. She also noted another experience where she was coaching skiers. She was at the top of the hill with them during all competitions. However, with greater security at the Olympics and other coaches advising her not to be in the same place, Kogan listened to these authority figures and watched one of her skiers not perform their best when Kogan was in need to her. The days to follow, Kogan followed her instincts and stayed at the top of the hill for the rest of the games. This concluded that you should follow your instincts and speak up for what you know when your athlete needs, even if there are authority figures in the mix. So Kogan outlines mental preparation for Olympics, and these are 3 main points that she teaches. We have mindfulness training, managing energy, and what if scenarios. So getting into the mindfulness training, she lays out that mindfulness training is paying attention on purpose in the present moment and doing it non-judgmentally. She teaches this to all of her athletes. So playing in the moment, being in the moment, not focusing on any other distractions outside of there. So when you step onto the court or when you step out onto the field, you leave whatever problems you have behind, and you're there focusing on your plan of attack. And then this practicing mindfulness crosses over from sports to everyday life. There were 3 studies that she included in her text supporting her mindfulness training. So there were the 3 different studies. One was an athlete-specific study, one was a female athletes-only study, and then the other one was general public. The athlete study, mindfulness training, the conclusion was mindfulness training contributed to enhancement in competition. The female athlete study, the conclusion was mindfulness training increased awareness and acceptance. And for the general public study, mindfulness stabilized negative effects, just stabilizing them. Negative effects means it did not increase or provoke any more negative effects. So it helped with anxiety is what they were testing for. And then just a little quote from Kogan saying overall mindfulness may work better than relaxation for athletic performance. And that's prior to athletic performance. So mindfulness to coach Olympic athletes. She uses them in 2 different settings. She uses them in a group setting and also an individual setting. The group setting, she starts off with a primary training where everybody starts in this big group. So it's not specific towards anybody. She's not talking to anyone specific, but they can have support from fellow athletes or fellow teammates. The only time that she continues this is if it's a team sport in a group setting, because you do need mindfulness as a team when you're playing as a team. And then on the individual settings, she uses quite a few different tools. She uses audio recordings, Headspace app, and then guided meditations, and that's from the UCLA Mindfulness Awareness Research Center website. Even if you are in team sports, she does meet with you individually and goes over all of these information. She did mention one athlete that did use the Headspace app and said that it really did help him. Also, she did give examples of when she did fencing with her fencing team and how mindfulness helped get the athletes to focus on what she called one touch at a time, one point at a time for her fencers. And then we get into energy management. So the definition of energy management is a combination of stress management and competitive anxiety. And this is also in turn accepting one's anxiety and understanding one's own personal energy states to determine what contributes to their best performance. So then we get into the inverted U curve. This outlines optimal combinations of arousal and performance. It is a great self-assessment tool and it is an individualized tool. Not everyone is going to have the same result or assessment. And I personally have used this tool when I have coached my my softball players. I have used this for my pitchers, and you give a scale on 1 to 10 from the performance level and the level of pressure, and their optimal performance will be a different number on the level of pressure when they hit their peak ideal zone. And I have done this self-assessment, and it seems like I run at a number 7, whereas other people might run at a 5, which is pretty neutral. Some people might run at a 2. Some people might run at a 10. It just kind of depends on who you are and what kind of athlete you are. So For energy management, she also states that if you recreate if you create a mock competition for your athletes, you're going to set a time and date, just like a regular competition. You're going to have them wear uniforms. You're going to have officials. You're going to have friends, family, and fans come to this. And then athletes must use these mock competitions to practice what they have learned. Assessments and adjustments are made after the mock competition, and this will set a level of pressure and a level of practice on how to deal with the pressure. And then these assessments, you want to look at the athlete, and you want to look at, are they using their mindfulness? Are they using the appropriate personal energy level? Are they using imagery? Are they using their mental routine? Are they using their coping strategies? So each athlete is individualized, and you want to see what is working with them in the mock competition and what is not. And this is the time to fine tune what the athlete does before, during, and after competition, so they can hit their peak performance. And then we're going to get into the what if scenarios. So the what if scenarios and mentally prepares the athlete how to respond. And then this is kind of described as, we all want to compete in the perfect conditions, but this tool helps us make any situation the perfect competition environment. And one example that she does give is she had this Olympic diving team, and for one of one of the Olympic Games, they had to compete outside where there's wind, sun, rain, just anything thrown out at them, whereas other diving competitions were done inside. So the U.S. Olympic team went and practiced at this one diving arena for weeks prior to competition, and then once competition arose, there was wind and a little bit of rain, and these athletes weren't fazed by it because they practiced with their what if scenarios. Another tool that she describes is using virtual reality, or VR. It takes the guesswork out of what the athlete will experience at the Olympic Games. It helps athletes with their imagery prior to the Olympic Games, especially for the first-time athletes. It puts the athletes right into what they will experience at the Olympic Games. It is one thing to watch it on TV, but it's another thing to actually be within the arena. So the VR tool actually helps you see, hear, and see and hear everything that's going to happen. Performance as a sports psychologist, I did mention about games mode earlier. So the sports psychologists are to focus on the athlete's preparation for the big event, but often forget that they also must be on top of their mental condition to make sound decisions for the athletes. This is also games mode, is what she describes. You gotta maintain your level of self-care, and sports psychologists also need to practice what they teach to their athletes about their mental toughness. So they must be present within their moment. They need to run through their what if scenarios. They need to just do everything that you teach to your athletes. Sports psychologists must be mentally prepared for anything thrown at them. They need to have an open mind. They need to assess each situation individually. They need to quickly learn about the history, culture, and dynamics of each individual to accurately assess each situation. And to accurately do this, then we get into the whole person context. So the whole person context is decision making that considers the whole person competing instead of just looking at the individual athlete. And to do this, the whole person challenges can arise from culture, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender, sexual orientation, disability, and personal identity. So you need to look at what country you guys are in. You need to look at all of these: culture, race, ethnicity. Look at all of these and see how you are going to create a plan of attack to make sure that the athlete is successful. So we're going to get into my concluding thoughts. Um, I thought that most of the article was positive. There were a lot of points in the article which were consistent with books that I have read in the past. Kogan's credentials and personal experiences give the article credibility. And then Kogan also pulls from a number of different professional studies that support her points. There is one thing that I would change about the article, and is that the inclusion of the experiences with athletes where a coaching technique did not work for an athlete, and how she adapted to what would work for them. So, if an athlete were to have an imagery practice and it just wasn't working for them, I would have loved to see how she changed a plan of attack and figured out what would work for them. Um, but other than that, I thought that the whole article was positive, and I thought it had a lot of great points in there. There was a lot of points that I wanted to put in this presentation, but didn't. So if you have the chance, I would highly recommend going and looking at this article. And if you have any questions, just let me know. All right. Thank you guys. Have a great day.